Welcome, everybody, to today's Digital Credentials Roundtable. I'm Kelly Hoyland. I'm the Director for Higher Education Programs here at One Ed Tech. We're excited to have you join us today for our great resource for you on CLR and LER programs, focusing primarily on CLR as an example of an LER program. We're happy that you could join us today. If you could just take a minute and complete the poll so we can have a better understanding of who's in our audience today, that would be great. So as I said, I'm here from One Ed Tech, and my name is Kelly. I'm joined by two great co-presenters from two different institutions who are running CLR programs. So they will introduce themselves as they get started in their presentation, but feel free during our presentation today, if you have questions, use the chat throughout for any conversation you may have, as well as any questions you have. If it makes sense for us to ask those questions during their presentations, we will do that. Otherwise, we have also saved time for Q&A at the end. So if they're more of a broader question or a question for both presenters, we'll save those for the end. Our plan today is we will have Jeff present first on his program at UCO, and then we'll move to Temple's program, and then, like I said, followed by the Q&A at the end. We are recording today, so I ask that you make sure to leave yourself muted unless you're asking a question later. During that time, we appreciate it. So with that, thank you for coming, and I will give us just a little bit of background information before we start. So One Ed Tech, just to give you a little bit of foundational information, we look at digital credentials as this holistic ecosystem from education to employment, including K-12, higher ed, career, and career advancement. We're going to focus on the CLR today, the Comprehensive Learner Record, because we really see this as a central point to help power this whole digital credentials ecosystem. In our work, we have a number of open standards which allow these records and achievements to be able to be done in a consistent way so that they can move between institutions and organizations while still maintaining the rich set of data that they have on that learning achievement. We do that through open badges, CLR, and CASE. So to have a little level set before we jump into it, you might have heard the term learner and employment records, or LERs. This is really a kind of a generic term describing a digital space, a digital wallet for individuals to be able to collect their credentials and achievements in a way that they can then share them with prospective employers for new job opportunities or job advancements. So there's a number of types of LERs and a number of things that can be an LER, like an open badge, a micro-credential, as well as a CLR. So we won't talk about open badges and micro-credentials today because we've done other roundtables on those, but just for your information, I thought I would share these. The micro-credentials typically a short-term focus on a discrete set of competencies, typically expressed through that open badge standard. But today we'll be focusing on comprehensive learner records. And this is a little bit confusing because we talk about a comprehensive learner record plus the comprehensive learner record standard. So the comprehensive learner record is typically an official document capturing, recording, communicating what learning has happened and where it's happened in that higher ed experience. This can be both in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. It is not a traditional transcript. It is likely not replacing a traditional transcript. This is kind of to augment, to allow you to capture that holistic experience that students have it in higher education. Ideally, those comprehensive learner records are expressed using the comprehensive learner standard. And this standard is designed so that those achievements are in a consistent data format so that they can be not only machine readable, but also can be readable by humans, that digital record can move between institutions and still be verified for accuracy and things like that. It does support open badges as well as the W3C verifiable credentials and the credential engine registry. So it kind of is a way to collect everything together for you and work through that. So that's a little bit of background information. So now we'll transition so you can actually see how two institutions are using comprehensive learner records. So with that, I will turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Kelly, and welcome to everyone. I see names popping up on the grid that I know I have connected with across the years, even the decades in higher education at conferences and so forth. So welcome to everyone. I'm excited to share about a process, a program, an initiative that we've had in place here at the University of Central Oklahoma, coming up on 8 years now after we ran a 1-year smaller pilot and that is our Student Transformative Learning Record. STLR is the acronym, so you'll hear me saying stellar at multiple points during the presentation here. But I thought I needed to start with our operational definition of transformative learning. Those of you from an adult ed background or other kinds of background may be familiar with transformative learning theoretically as devised by Jack Mesereau in the late 70s. And so we definitely built our transformative learning process from that conceptual base, but we needed an operational definition. This two-pronged definition works for us. Beyond disciplinary skills might be another name for soft skills, for graduate attributes, for institutional learning outcomes. You get the idea. And the second prong that you see there owes very much to the base of work that Mesereau did, because what we want this development of the students holistically to accomplish is to expand their perspectives of their relationships to themselves, to others, and to community and to the environment. In final note here on this slide is that in the 2008-2009 academic year is when UCO put transformative learning into our mission statement. So on the next slide, what you'll see is kind of an overview of a typical student engagement in this beyond disciplinary development. The willingness to participate is something you hope that all students will have, but this is also the place for me to emphasize that Stellar is not an opt-in process. If a student takes a class and there is a Stellar tagged assignment in that class, the student is going to engage with our Stellar process. And the way that that looks is what you see in this cycle here. The faculty member will design a prompt, a reflective prompt to associate to the assignment of her choice in that class, and that experience of working that assignment or the class activity, whatever it is the thing that is the presentation, if you will. What faculty are trained to do here is to prompt for students' thoughts about their own learning and especially about their considerations, trying to help them recognize their own biases. And then there is the critical reflection process, which the students go through. They put that reflection to paper, if you will, in a written narrative, or it could be a PowerPoint presentation or a presentation to the class, a number of different formats. And then there is what we hope is a true engagement on the student's part with this idea of what am I doing here? What am I accomplishing? How am I growing as a human being? And that's what we hope will lead to the expanded perspective. The faculty assess those written narratives using a robust set of rubrics that were built from the AAC&U value rubrics. And I will show you what the documentation for all of this looks like as the student goes through her career here at UCO. So it's not opt-in. A better description might be unavoidable. You're in a class that has this, you're going to do it. But then we have all the co-curricular activities that are also Stellar tagged, which you can engage in at your option. So a quick summary of this is on the next couple of slides. You get the idea. I'm sorry, I failed to realize I had put in this Metro map, which I think is a great summary of these beyond disciplinary skills. Very early on when we built this program, we convened our Stellar Employer Advisory Board, made up of hiring managers and VP folks in HR from most of the major workforce areas in the Oklahoma City metro region. And in a work session in October of 2016, we asked them, if you hire a graduate who has in her, it's called Stellar Snapshot, this documentation I'll show in a minute, if you hire a grad whose snapshot indicates she achieved to a high level in one or more of these central tenets that you see represented by the icons on the map, what are the skills that she should have day one to hit the ground running if you decide to hire her? And so we did round robin table groups, and those employers came up with just a list under each of these tenet areas. We laid them out in a metro map, and the transfer stations on the metro map are where there are skills that had been identified by these employers as connecting to one or more of these tenets. So this gives you an idea of what that beyond disciplinary skills area is. That is one part of our definition. So on to what this looks like in terms of the various activities inside and outside the classroom. I won't spend a great deal of time here. You know what these are. Students learn on an athletic team. They develop themselves when they're in band or the jazz ensemble, when they're working at a community garden as a service learning project, all of these things. And the next slide kind of shows how we tried to bring all of this together, because we understand that we needed a way to document, track, assess, I would add, and share these experiences, meaning the students being able to share them with potential employers, with potential graduate schools. And because this process for us is a formative process, we require students to submit their stellar snapshot when they apply for student worker positions, when they apply for on-campus scholarships, so that we give them a chance to practice, if you will, using their snapshot before they're in the real world in front of a hiring manager. So the next slide gets into a little more detail about how our students can actually earn this stellar credit. I've mentioned the assignments before. I've mentioned briefly the events. A perfect example is the Asian Moon Festival, held every semester here. And we know if students attend that Asian Moon Festival, they will at least be exposed to a different culture. So hence the stellar tagging for global and cultural competencies. Student organizations or group members can earn stellar credit. Many times the faculty sponsors of these organizations will have students do a summary narrative based on what they learned in a leadership position. For example, in the Asian American Student Association, out-of-class student projects under the mentorship of faculty. Most of those are stellar tagged because the faculty realize the value and the benefit, and students want to earn these stellar credits. Stellar locations are fixed places around campus where we know students can develop some insights related to themselves personally. Examples are the Melton Gallery here, if they attend a gallery show, if they attend an activity such as a theater arts presentation, or if they swipe in with their student ID card at our health and wellness center, we're able to collect the fact that at least they were exposed to the idea of health and wellness when they swiped in at that fixed location. We also have portable swipe units that are the mechanisms we use to collect their participation in the Stellar tagged activities that could be anywhere on campus or even off campus if it happens to be, for example, a service learning activity. And a quick note about the technological back end to all of this. What we do in collecting these co-curricular activity stellar engagements is that we basically launch an LMS pseudo course shell, which might be named Asian Moon Festival Spring 2023. Susie Jones earned an automatic lowest level stellar engagement of simply exposure because we know she was exposed to another culture. So we use the LMS as the tracking mechanism behind all of this. And then finally, over the years, we learned the lesson based on students coming to us, telling us, you know, I thought I had a pretty important realization when I was working in XYZ student group, which was an informal group, not affiliated with UCO. Is there a way I could potentially get stellar credit for that? And because everything with stellar is evidence-based, we have to gather the evidence in the form of the reflection so that we can assess that reflection as we do all other narratives that are being assessed. So these comprise the various ways that students can earn stellar credit. So the next slide will show you what this documentation, this thing, actually looks like. This is an official UCO record. It carries the registrar's seal when it is the official version. Students are able at no charge to get unofficial copies of their stellar snapshots at any time. And this is the place where we are able to have the students, and this is very important, to have the students choose to show which stellar experiences they want to show on their stellar snapshot. This is another aspect of the snapshot's formative use, because everything that they possibly could put on a stellar snapshot has been vetted by the university. It's all official. It's the same as a grade, if you will, in terms of the university saying, yes, this student did this experience. It was assessed at the integration level, for example. And what you see on one of the front pages of the stellar snapshot there is the listing of the individual stellar engagements that the student chose to reveal. So what I mean by that is because the system captures all the students' stellar engagements plus the ratings that they achieved for those engagements, what the students are able to do by going through our single sign-on portal, accessing their own individual stellar information, they are able to pick and choose which things they want to show. And so in this front page, which shows leadership at the top, you'll see some arrowheads that represent the various levels of achievement. So the bottom one is named exposure, and there's a lot of arrowheads there, as you might guess. But then integration is the level above it. In this example, a student achieved the integration level, at least in terms of what she wants to reveal on her snapshot, for 3 different stellar engagements. And then she actually achieved the highest level of transformation in 2 engagements. And so what's listed underneath is that information actually includes the level achieved, the term and year when it was achieved, the name of the actual assignment or engagement. All of that is captured by our system. The other thing that makes this a formative tool for students is that they can shuttle the order of the tenets, and they could move global and cultural competencies to the top. For example, if they're going to a job interview where they think that would be highly prized by that particular employer, they can save out PDFs of all the versions that they build for use at a subsequent time. And if you notice on the second front page, down at the bottom, in the bottom right-hand corner, is a way for students to provide a link to their own personal website or their own personal e-portfolio, so that a graduate school or an employer would be able to link directly from the Stellar Snapshot. And then the third page that's shown there is, again, valuable feedback and input from our Stellar Employer Advisory Board. They suggested that for hiring managers not familiar with Stellar, that we needed to provide a sort of Stellar rubrics abstract. And so what's shown on that page is definitely not our robust Stellar rubrics that faculty and staff use to assess narratives. These are simple, basically single sentence statements about what it means when a student achieves, for example, the highest level of transformation in global and cultural competencies, or what the middle level of integration looks like in leadership, or what the lowest level of exposure means for service learning and civic engagement. So students can definitely get hard copies of these, but they are also communicated to grad schools and employers via the storefront, if you will. We happen to use Parchment, and I can tell you some interesting stories about Parchment initially supporting this and then deciding that it wasn't in their business model. They didn't have enough places, I guess, to make it worth their cost to support it. So what we've had to do is build a workaround manual process that happens in the registrar's office to actually get students' Stellar snapshots into that storefront. We're not happy about it, but it was one of those things where Parchment basically said, well, buck up, it's not going to change. But we have managed the workaround because we think it's very important for students to have that capacity. And we think it's also very important for students to use the same process with their Stellar snapshot that they use with the academic transcript. This sends an implicit message that this development, this outside of the classroom or even inside of the classroom development about expanding your perspective as a human, that's just as important as the academic transcript. So that is Stellar in a nutshell. Final thing I will say is that we also recognize the students who have achieved the transformation level with an honor cord in the color associated to that particular tenet. So as you can see on the Stellar snapshot, if it is the global and cultural competencies tenet that the student achieved a transformation in, she will get an orange honor cord to wear at graduation, indicating she had achieved that level in that area of beyond disciplinary development. And we have in the graduation program a page explaining what Stellar is, and students are recognized in the program with indicators the same way as students are recognized if they earn academic honors. So we keep this at a level which is absolutely parallel to the emphasis that we put on the academic transcripts. So with that as a brief info dump, I will pause here. I know that we have a specific amount of time, so Kelly may want to proceed next to our colleague from Temple.
Yeah, thanks for that overview. That's really good. It's great to see such a mature program example. So now we'll transition to Temple, who is earlier in their rollout of it, but still has a great example. So with this, I'll turn it over to Bhavesh.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Bhavesh Bambrolia. I'm the University Registrar at Temple University. We're a very large school located in Philadelphia. We have 17 schools and colleges, 2 international students, over 33,000 head count. 76% of our enrollment is in um, uh, undergraduate students. We launched our comprehensive learner record for undergraduate students in partnering with the Fox School of Business. But before we did that, we had a work group that we got together and sort of decided how and what is it that we want to do with the comprehensive learner record. And so our goal for the Temple University CLR that would sort of transcend individual schools and college would be to tell a student's holistic experience at Temple University, regardless of what school or college they would be in. And so when we designed our CLR, we started with the end goal first. It's the using the idealized design, and we fundamentally asked the question, what is the story that we want to tell? And then once we decided that we want to tell the story about a student's holistic experience, both in and out of the classroom, then we came up with conceptual designs of what design would tell that story. Then working towards working further down, working further down, we uh, also wanted to make sure that our story and the design convey the mission and learning outcomes. Then the next thing was to identify what data do we have that will tell that story, and what data do we need, and how do we get it. And the idea behind this is that we don't stop because we don't have something. We keep working to acquire what we don't have so that our end goal is reached. So in the next slide is highlighting that sort of journey that kind of aligns with the data and the story that our CLR tells. So our CLR has both academic and non-academic component, on-campus employment. The non-academic component includes activities in leaderships, internships, the course, the skills from courses, skills from Gen Ed, global experience. Then each of those elements are then aligned with the data source of where all that information comes from. So we use Banner for our student information system. Our academic component and on-campus employment comes from Banner. The Gen Ed experience and the global experience comes from Banner. We use Campus Lab to manage student activities and engagement and leadership roles. That data is used to fill the activities and leadership requirements within the CLR. Handshake is leveraged for internships. So we use data from Handshake. Then we built a custom database for mapping out the individual courses to that particular skill set. Uh, prior to uh, prior to build a part of generating our part of this process was also building an internal infrastructure for managing all of the data. So right now we're getting data from Handshake for all of the internships, but we know that other schools and colleges may be using different systems. So in order to integrate that into the internship component, we can seamlessly do that using API. So there, part of this was making sure that we have a internal technical infrastructure that is scalable, and the design is scaled not only just for Fox, but for other schools and colleges as well. So, so for our CLR, our first page of the CLR, provides an overview of the student's academic program and the program goals, and highlights the summary of skills from the program and subject areas that a student enrolled in. And what we think this illuminates is a student's interest in academic programs that are just beyond their particular college or particular area of academic focus. And then the next slide. Then we also, the next slide talks about the general education program, where students develop skills within the gen ed courses. And then we also, for the consumer, we illuminate, not illuminate, but we kind of explain what are those opportunities for students and the competencies that they develop. The next slide shows particular courses that align with the skill set from those courses. What we were able to do with this particular page is we made the individual courses clickable, so the consumer can then click on the, let's say, Stat 1102, and it opens up the web page to course description for that, so that the consumer can know exactly what entailed in that particular course. And then this is the experience page, which summarizes students' experience in various areas in student engagement, professional development, on-campus employment, and study abroad. Then each of those are clickable. That opens up details on the web as well. And then within the Fox School of Business, they have an experiential component where students earn badges, and the badges are created created between a combination of coursework and non-coursework, or non-coursework in general. And so we publish the badge information as well on our CLR. The badges are clickable here as well, so that the consumer can learn more information about what was entailed to earn that badge. And then we end out the CLR with the students' curriculum details upon graduation. So when a student completes their academic program, we publish what the details of the academic programs and link out to additional information that the consumer might find beneficial. So that was our, so yes, so this concludes our concept for the CLR, the process of how we designed it, and the data of where it all comes from.
Great, thank you. So there have been some questions coming into the chat, so I'll roll through those, and some of them might apply to both of you, so I'll try to manage that. And feel free in the chat, if I don't get it, raise your hand and we can unmute and talk about it too. So one of the questions, Jeff, somebody had missed how long the Stellar program has been running at UCO, and is it across all students?
Yes, we've been in broad rollout since fall of 2015. We did a small pilot in the 2013-2014 academic year, but it is across both the curriculum and the co-curriculum. We hit the 70% or so mark for training full-time faculty, 3 or 4 years ago. We're never going to be at 100 because we get retirements every year and a crop of 30 new full-time or tenure track faculty coming in every year. But that indicates the breadth across campus anyway, in which Stellar lives. We also train the student affairs personnel who are very much big, strong advocates of Stellar, because they realize the development that happens outside of the classroom, and they're eager for the students to get credit for that, if you will, for students to be more metacognitive about their own development. So it's across the entire institution. We have Stellar tagged assignments in every college on campus. And the number of, you may find this interesting, and incidentally, I posted a link to our Stellar Analytics. It's a public-facing link with interactive graphs and charts. You can see some of our data. But interestingly, now at this point, we have over 60,000 stellar student narratives that have been assessed. So we have this massive database of assessed reflective narratives that we're using now in some NSF-funded analysis with artificial intelligence, natural language processing scans of these student stellar narratives that have already been assessed by humans. And we've just been over the moon excited about the results from that, because the AI and of course the expertise of the person running the AI at our research partner company was able to reveal some very, very fascinating things about what actually goes on when students have one of these experiences. So the data are there. It's something we've been tracking for years. I didn't mention it. Stellar associates with about a 15% bump in student retention, freshman to sophomore year after census date. That is bigger for STEM declared majors. We see about a 25% correlation. We see about a half a letter grade bump in GPA when students engage with Stellar. And of course, we've seen really, really good graduation rate improvements as a result of the trickle down from Stellar.
That's great. And I think kind of a follow-up for both of you is, what is the ongoing role of like the employee advisory boards or profession now that you're rolling it out? What's your feedback been from employers as well? So if the two of you want to both kind of address how you're working with employers, that would be great.
We had when we in our early development of the CLR, we met with Fox's employer partner, and they shared feedback that similar to what Jeff had said, that it is very helpful for employers to sort of understand the student's experience holistically. But apart from that, we've not had any wider or more extensive connection with the employers just yet.
Our employer advisory board has been something that we've maintained contact with, convening. In the early years, we met basically quarterly because we needed their feedback on things like how to design the snapshot so that it's employer friendly. We needed their feedback to do things like mock interviews with students who had had stellar experiences, in order to try and understand, okay, what makes a difference in a graduate who has had this stellar engagement versus other graduates that I've typically interviewed across the years. And then the other thing that we found very interesting from this unique kind of an employer advisory board, because it's an institutional level employer advisory board, not a program advisory board. And of course, we, as all universities, have our engineering advisory, employer advisory board, our criminal justice employer advisory board, etc. But what the employers or the hiring managers and HR folks in our stellar employer advisory board told us was that they were happy to be engaged in the group that they were working on this stellar snapshot from an institutional perspective, because they felt more as though their input and their feedback was being turned into actionable processes, tools, and documents. And we drilled in a little bit, asking them, what do you mean by that? And it was head nodding all around the room when one, I guess, courageous person said, well, you know, I've been on these things for UCO, and then named a bunch of other institutions in the area, these program advisory boards, and typically they meet every 6 months, and typically the department comes in and tells us all this great stuff that they're doing. And then at the end, there's a little bit of time for Q&A, and they ask us what we think would be good. And we tell them, and then we come back 6 months later and everything is the same. We start from scratch again. And so we definitely did not want to have that. And I'm sure there are program advisory boards that function very effectively. So please understand, this is not a blanket condemnation. I'm simply sharing what the members on this Stellar Employer Advisory Board told us. So that really lit a fire under us to make sure that all our Employer Advisory Board meetings were places where we solicited their input, actually brought them different examples of things to look at that were ideas. And we actually had students who had gone through Stellar and were out in the job market to then come and talk to the Employer Advisory Board. Those were some of the most beneficial conversations because that student was able to say what she did specifically with her snapshot in the employment interview, that she was in a process, was being considered as a finalist after, I think she said 4 separate interviews, and she had gotten up to one of the final 2. And this was the kind of thing that we wanted to set up with our Employer Advisory Board meetings. So they've done great things for us. They've given testimonials on video that we include in our Stellar film, a 17-minute film about Stellar, which admittedly does have some of those administrator talking head segments, but it's mostly Stellar from in the words of and from the perspectives of students, faculty, and employers. And I'll dig up the link to that and put the link to that in the chat.
Perfect, thank you. Bhavesh, I think this was a question for you. We had someone ask how you're integrating data from platforms like Coursera into Banner. So like when a learner completes a course or micro-credentials, how are those enrollments and course completions integrated?
So with the our right now our CLR is only focused on skills, course to skills, specifically from enrollment at Temple University. We have not gone outside to Coursera or any other institutions, but we do for Fox. We do look at transfer courses, transfer equivalency courses, where the courses have been evaluated that satisfy the requirements of a Temple course, which would be equivalent. But we're not bringing in any non-Temple experiences into the Temple CLR.
Great. If you have any other questions, feel free to get those in the chat. I would just ask the two of you, while we're waiting for any last minute questions, what's next? What's on your horizon? What are you hoping to accomplish, or what are your challenges that you've hit in your program thus far that you would be looking to address in the future?
Well, I can say from the Stellar perspective, we definitely learned lessons. We look in the rearview mirror and see the potholes that we hit. And one of them was not realizing the faculty embrace of Stellar. And what I mean by that is not understanding how to message it at the beginning. Faculty are very busy people. They don't want to have extra work forced on them. They want to maintain the autonomy of their own classes. And so this is why we made the decision up front to set up a system where faculty were able to associate these kinds of developmental practices and opportunities with an assignment of their own choosing, an existing assignment. We weren't going in asking them to do something different or new. But it was about 2 or 3 semesters into our broad rollout when we started hearing from faculty, wow, this is great because this is the first time I've been able to see documentation of what I thought I was doing with my students and accomplishing with my students in terms of helping them develop as human beings. So there was a sort of validation aspect to faculty engagement with this, and they actually saw the student artifact where this was put forward in the student's own words. So we didn't know to message in the beginning that that would be a positive for faculty. And then on the student side, we had what we thought was this brilliant idea in the beginning to have a mobile app that students could use in order to track their stellar engagements. In other words, a dashboard where they could see, okay, I can go look at leadership and here's how many I've gotten transformation, integration, and exposure. But then we quickly found out from the students that they did not want to use that because they found it so much more valuable to use the stellar snapshot. It didn't mean so much to them to get something quick on the fly just to see where they were, as it meant for them to go in and be able to work with what were the experiences that they had amassed to that point regarding stellar. So that was a rabbit hole we went down, spent some money on, turned out we shouldn't have gone there. So we did learn some very definite lessons, but it's been very well received by faculty and staff in general, and the students especially.
Thanks. And Bhavesh, do you have kind of what's next for your program as you continue to grow it?
Yes. So right now we have other schools and colleges that have implemented suitable to create co-curricular programs and that lead to badging. So we're working with them to integrate that into our CLR process. We are also going to look into developing a web-based product that highlights the CLR data to advise for advising purpose to advisors, so they can get a review of the students, what's going on just outside of the classwork. And then the other thing that we're planning on doing is, as we bring more schools and colleges into the CLR platform, we're also going to be looking at what third-party systems do they use to manage the the data that we have in the CLR, and begin to integrate that as well.
Great. Yeah, and I would say it's interesting as institutions roll out these CLRs, because it really does help uncover what is happening at your institution in different ways and different pockets across. It's almost like a self-discovery process for you to figure out, oh, there's these really cool things happening. Let's figure out a way to get them kind of at least acknowledged in a central way. So
Kelly,
perfect.
Bhavesh's comment reminded me of something that I hadn't mentioned so far, and that is there have been other institutions that have adopted and adapted Stellar. The largest university in Ireland, Technological University of Dublin, they're maybe 3 or 4 years into their quote unquote stellarization. And a 30,000 student university in Sao Paulo, Mackenzie University in Brazil, is about a year and a half, no, 2 years into their stellarization. And we've had others in Singapore and Canada, a couple in the US, and this spread is typically because the institutions find us and then they get in touch and say, you know, we want to learn more, don't want to reinvent the wheel. And because the process that we designed and developed for Stellar was supported by a Title III grant, that means that we, you know, all we can claim is just attribution in Creative Commons. And so we're happy to share, but we do have a consulting model that we are able to guide people along if they do want to adapt and adopt Stellar. And some of those adoptions have been almost whole cloth. They just use their particular names for their existing tenants, but others have been highly adapted to mission, to the fact that a couple only wanted to start on the co-curricular side and not on the curricular side. So that's been something that we have continued to work on, and assume we'll, or we hope we'll continue to do that in the future with Stellar also.
Great. Thank you. I don't think there's any other questions at this point. So thank you both very much for this information. And I will share the recording with those of you who have been registered, so you have access to this and can share it with others. I would like to make one note. We are going to change the programming a little bit for our Digital Credentials Roundtable. We were doing them monthly. We are going to be switching to a quarterly format. So our next Roundtable or Digital Credentials session like this won't actually be happening until August 2nd. And I'll be sure to email you all the details when we get those finalized with times and a way for you to sign up and register. But after almost 3 years of doing these roundtables, it's time for us to kind of refactor and refocus and we'll do 4 really quality ones throughout the year. But that allows us to make sure we're still supporting our members as well as the larger community in what they need in a way that's sustainable. So thank you all for coming today. I appreciate the information from both Temple and UCO on some great programs in very different stages in their development, but some good examples for higher ed to look at. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.